What are we discussing on today's podcast, you ask? Well, we got to discuss expectations for the second half of the D-back season based off that phenomenal first half that they just had. But even though how good it was, we still have to discuss some improvements this team can make for the second half of the season, all on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day listening to, always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 from my personal account, or just look up Locked on Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe on the Locked on Diamondbacks YouTube channel. And today's episode is actually brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, on today's podcast, we got Zach Gallen joining us, and no, not the pitcher, but the bobblehead for the YouTube audience, since he's making the All-Star start. I think at the time, the game's Tuesday, right? So at the time of you guys listen to the podcast, Zach Gallen will be starting the All-Star game. So I brought his bobblehead on today's stream for the YouTube audience. So Zach Gallen, the 44.1 streak bobblehead, will be joining us because for segment number one, I want to talk about Dbacks expectations for the rest of the season, because I was getting into a heated argument at work with one of my coworkers because he's a Dodgers fan. He kept bringing up, oh, look at the ESPN standings about how the Dodgers are in first place. And I was just getting so mad because even though the Dbacks are technically tied with them because they don't have the same record, even though the Dbacks won the tiebreaker, they're not actually ahead of the Dodgers in the standings, even though they have, at least they're not actually ahead of them in the standings, despite when you see the game is back total. They're both not applicable for both. There's no number there because they're technically tied, but they're also technically not tied. So because the Dodgers technically are leading the division, it just led to a lot of arguments between me and my other coworker, even though I was like, we got more first half wins, we own the head-to-head, and we own the tiebreaker. It does not matter because according to the MLB standings right now on ESPN, the Dodgers are leading the NL West. So that led me to this long argument about D-backs expectations for the rest of the year, because I was like, I want the D-backs to make the postseason. I want them to have a deep postseason run, but if they lose in the championship series, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, this season was a total failure. Because I think the D-backs, based off what we had expectations wise coming into this year, I think winning a playoff round and losing your second playoff round would be considered a successful season, because basically the argument started is because we've just been going back and forth about who's been better between the Dodgers and D-backs. And he's like, when your team loses in the playoffs, you're going to be like, wait, you're just happy to be here. And that's partly true, because this is my overall conversation when it comes to the D-backs and how I view them for the rest of the season, because the D-backs are having a fantastic first half of the regular season. They do look like one of the better teams in the National League. And if we actually had to stack up the D-backs against the rest of the teams in the National League real quick, I mean, of course, they're not better than the Braves. I would say the Dodgers on paper have more talent. And then after that, they're probably right there with the Marlins. You can't count out the Reds either. Like, they're in that Marlins-Reds tier. I would probably put the D-backs slightly ahead of them if I did a straight power ranking, but in terms of a tier ranking, they're probably right there in that conversation. So they're probably arguably the third best team in the National League. And for the D-backs, with how I viewed them coming into the season, like for the second half, the rest of the year, like I need the D-backs to keep up this 90-plus win pace. What we saw from the first half, we know this D-backs team offensively can score runs. You got two elite frontline starters. Your bullpen is just good enough. This D-backs should continue the pace that they're on. Over the last 24 games, they did hit a little bit of snag. They were like 11-13 their last 24 games. But the D-backs still finished this year with 91, 92 wins. That's a fantastic season. I want them to continue to be in the race for the NL West division lead, but I don't need this D-backs team to win the division for it to be considered a successful season. We're already on pace to be a successful season because, like I've said before, expectations for me entering the year for the D-backs was just finish with at least 80 wins, between 80 and 85 wins. Don't even have to make the postseason. Just between 80 and 85 wins, preferably above 500 or at least 500, with Corbin Carroll winning Rookie of the Year, the Marte bounce back, Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly finishing in the top 10 of Cy Young voting, and bullpen just being decent. Like, those were kind of my wants and needs entering the season, and pretty much all those have hit on the 10th degree. And because of that, this D-backs is on a better pace than just 80 wins. This team is on pace for about 90 wins because we got the best case scenario, the best version of the Martes, the Carrolls, the Gallen and Kelly combination, the level that your 4 or 5 best relievers can be at. Like, the D-backs have hit the best case scenario for a lot of their players. And so now, knowing the version that I saw from the first half of this D-backs team mixed with expectations I had coming into the season, the D-backs have shown me that a disappointing season from this team would be to miss the postseason this year. If the D-backs continue that last 20 game slide where maybe the rest of the season they play at like a 480 win pace and they end up winning like 86, 87 games and they miss the postseason, like, that would be a failure for a team that spent more time in first place in their division than I think any other team in the NL West. It would be a major disappointment if this team slid far enough back where they weren't even able to make the wild card. That would be a major disappointment for this team. I don't think it's disappointing if this team wins the division, gets a first round bye, wins the divisional round, makes it to the championship series, and then loses to like the Braves in 6 in the championship series. I don't think that's disappointing. Now, if the D-backs get a first round bye and then lose in the divisional round, that could be considered a playoff disappointment. That could be considered playoff failure, but I think it depends how it unfolds. I mean, if you play somehow like the Dodgers or Braves in the divisional round and you lose in 7 games, I don't think that would be a wildly crazy thing for it to happen to the D-backs. But if you play like the Reds and get swept in the divisional round, yeah, we can have that conversation. And for me, for the D-backs the rest of the season, they need to continue on this 90-win pace. They have to make the postseason. I do think they need to win a round in the playoffs, whether it be wild card or divisional. I think just winning one round would be considered a successful season. Now, would losing in the wild card to divisional round, if that's their first round of the playoffs, would that be considered a failure? Maybe. I would have to see it unfold exactly how everything transpired. But I think this season would be considered a major success based off what I saw from the first half. If they did finish with 90 plus wins, got a high wild card or first place division winner, and then they won at least one round in the postseason, that's all I really want from this team for the rest of the season. I still want Corbin Carroll, of course, to win Rookie of the Year and finish top 3 in MVP voting, and Zach Gallen to potentially win the Cy Young. But in terms of team perspective and team goals the rest of the year, hit those 90-plus wins, make sure you make the postseason, and make some noise in the postseason. I do not need this team to make it to the World Series or even the Championship Series, but if they were able to at least win the wild card round, then if they lost in the divisional round, I think I could stomach that. The D-backs need to make a little bit of noise. They need to do because basically, if you look at the D-backs in 2017, right, they won their wild card game and then they lost to the Dodgers in the next series. And of course, we have more than just one wild card game. Like back in 2017, we only had the one wild card game. At least we get a little mini series now. So if that happened again, literally, the D-backs win like 92 games. They win the wild card round and then lose to the Dodgers. Hopefully not in a sweep, but lose to the Dodgers in the divisional round. I don't think that would be a disappointment of a season at all by the D-backs. I think that I would consider the season a success at that point. And for second half expectations, that's what I want. Win a playoff round, win 90-plus games, make it to the postseason. And from there, I think a lot of that is gravy for me personally as the D-backs supporter. Now, hopefully when the D-backs come around, we're able to get some playoff tickets. And the best place to buy tickets is GameTime, because buying tickets shouldn't be stressful. And that's why I go to GameTime, because GameTime is the place for last minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. GameTime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The GameTime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get the images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps and you're set. Snag the tickets without the stress with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And don't forget to catch every D-backs pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app and search up Diamondbacks. All right. Let's get back into the podcast and let's discuss some improvements for the D-backs in the second half of the season. Because look, don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. The D-backs had a fantastic first half. They are quote unquote tied for the division lead. They have currently 52 wins. Last year at this point, they had 52 losses. The year before, they had 52 wins total on the entire season. So the D-backs are definitely looking good. They're definitely looking like a team that's potentially locked into the postseason race and could make some noise. But if we want to feel better about the D-backs ceiling entering the postseason and really feel like this is a team that could give us a run for our money for the World Series, because I'm not putting any D-backs World Series bets on right now. No. I will do Corbin Carroll to win MVP. I will do Zach Allen to win Cy Young. But D-backs to win the World Series, I'm probably not that confident, even though the odds are looking good. But if they made these improvements in the second half of the season, maybe I will bet on the D-backs to win the World Series, or at least win the National League. So let's get into those improvements. The first one I want to discuss, something that's super obvious and we've all talked about. Let me bring Zach Allen back into the fold. Let me not disrespect our all-star for the YouTube audience. One, because this first improvement has to do with his kind of spot, his grouping, right? Rotational depth. We know Zach Allen, potentially Cy Young Award winner, starting the All-Star game. No issues with him. Yeah, Merrill Kelly's on the injured list. He's still a stud. Will he finish as a Cy Young finalist? Probably not. But will he get some Cy Young votes this year? Potentially. We'll see how many innings he ends up pitching. But will it surprise you if Merrill Kelly finishes 10th in Cy Young voting? No, because he's that good. The rest of the rotation is where we really have question marks with the Ryan Nelsons, the Jamesons, the Fotts, the Zach Davies. Now, this D-backs rotation, if Tommy Henry does pitch in the second half, like how he's been pitching recently, not to the 1.5 ERA like we've seen over his last 4 starts, but if Tommy Henry can at least pitch in the second half, like how his current ERA is, which is a 3.75, if Tommy Henry the rest of the way pitches a 3.75 ERA, that's the perfect number 3 starter that the D-backs need in this rotation, because it's just not that strong after the Kellys and Gallons. But this is where I think the trade deadline is going to help, because I do think Mike Hazen is going to make a move in this area. Now, do I think he's going to get Corbin Burns or a Shane Bieber? Probably not. But he could get someone that's pretty good, like a Sonny Gray, who's having a fantastic season. Because he's on a team in the division, I don't think the D-backs are going after Alex Cobb, but an Alex Cobb type pitcher. Of course, he's having an all-star season, but a guy like Alex Cobb, who usually pitches to like a 3.5 ERA and is typically solid in your rotation, like a Nathan Eovaldi type, your perfect number 2, number 3 starter. Like, that's who the D-backs need to go out there and get. Like a Martin Perez type, when Martin Perez was pitching really good last year, like a Michael Wacha. Like, we need a pitcher like that to really round out this rotation. So I think rotational depth, unless a Ryan Nelson or Brandon Pfaadt pops in the second half of the year, I think Mike Hazen is going to need to make some moves at the deadline and go acquire another starting pitcher, because I don't think internally we have the answer. So if Mike Hazen is able to answer that problem at the deadline, then I think it will greatly improve the ceiling of this D-backs team. Something that's along the same lines when it comes to pitching for this D-backs squad, we have to figure out the closer situation. I don't know why the D-backs have actually, if you took out the 9th inning, you'd be like, whoa, the D-backs have fixed their bullpen. Because listen to some of the ERAs in this D-backs bullpen right now because it's not all that bad at all. If you look at some of the relievers, Chafin 3.16 ERA, McGough 2.72 ERA, Jose Ruiz 3.68 ERA, Miguel Castro 3.47 ERA, Cal Nelson 2.6 ERA, Dre Jameson before he got hurt did have a 3.32 ERA, Kevin Ginkel 2.38 ERA. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys with a sub 3.7 ERA, and that's not even counting guys who have struggled this year, who we all like a Joe Mantiply. Even Austin Adams has a 3.65 ERA. So if I told you the D-backs are going to have 7 to 8 relievers have a sub 3.7 ERA at the halfway point of the year, and none of those guys are Joe Mantiply, it would be like, sign me up for that scenario. Like, the D-backs have a solid bullpen. They have guys that they can go out there and trust in a high leverage moment or a 7th or 8th inning situation. They just can't trust them if it's a high leverage moment in the 9th inning. For some reason, D-backs relievers get brain fog. They forget who they are. It's like Space Jam. I don't know the best analogy, but it's like Space Jam. It's like the Monstars come just for the 9th inning and steal the power of whatever reliever we throw out there in a save situation. Because you look at the McGuffs, he's got like a near 5 ERA in save situations. Chafin has like a 6 ERA in save situations, or Castro does, or it's Nelson. Like, whoever you look at, they all have like a 4, 5, 6 ERA in save situations. I don't know why. The Chafin has closing experience. Castro's caught, had some saves in the 9th inning before in the past. McGough was a closer the last couple of years in Japan. I don't know why, but these guys just suck in the 9th inning. And my huge wish, even more than probably a rotational starter, because probably depth in the rotation is more important for the D-backs' success in the postseason, but I don't care. The biggest issue for the D-backs the last few years has been that 9th inning, and I want the D-backs to just go out there. It doesn't have to be a superstar, but even if it's like Kendall Graveman or just one of these random relievers that have 15 saves at the deadline with like a 2.9 ERA, like, I would love the D-backs to do that, because I'm tired of this closer roulette. None of these guys have worked out in this situation. Now, I do think this could potentially be an area where maybe do have the answer internally, because you do have so many solid relievers that's currently on the D-backs roster. You still got guys like Justin Martinez, who has the kind of stuff and makeup that you would want for your closer. He just hasn't put it all together yet. He does have a little Luis Frias in him, so hopefully he's not someone that's super volatile. But the D-backs, I think, have to fix the 9th inning, because the biggest stress and worry that I have for the D-backs entering the postseason is Zach Gallen pitches a 7-inning gem. He gives up 2 earned runs. The D-backs are leading 2-1. They bring out Chafin in the 8th. He pitches a 1-2-3 8th. Then you go to the 9th inning. You bring out a Castro. You bring out a Scott McGuff, and it doesn't really matter. They give up a 2-run bomb. D-backs lose in the 9th inning after a fantastic Zach Gallen start. I can already see it in my head, because that feels like what's gone on the whole D-back season. So D-backs definitely need to fix that closer role. And then the last improvement I want to talk about before we get to more improvements in segment number 3 is figuring out, you know what? Actually, I'm going to save it. Because we are kind of tight on time right now. So I'm actually going to save that one for segment number 3. So we're going to continue with D-backs improvements in the second half of the season coming up. But first, I want to talk to you guys about BetterHelp, because if you guys are dealing with some tough choices in life and the path forward isn't always clear, sometimes you just have to talk it out with someone. And that's where BetterHelp really can come in and help you. Because if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonMLB. And don't forget to catch every D-backs pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app and search up Diamondbacks. All right. Let's get back into the Diamondbacks podcast, and let's discuss some more improvements for the second half of the season for this D-backs team. The next one is figure out what to do with third base, specifically the power department for third base. Because look, Manny Rivera has had a very nice season at third base as a contact, just just a contact hitter. I mean, Emmanuel Rivera is currently batting 288. It's been as high. Felt like it was 330 for like 2.5 months there, but he only has a 368 slugging. Like he's pretty much just a singles machine. He's got some doubles on the year, but pretty much singles and doubles is all he does. He's got 1 home run on the year. You look at Josh Rojas, he's not even on the major league level right now. Perdomo, he could play some third base, but he only has 5 home runs. Like Evan Longoria definitely does play third base, but you probably want him to use him a little bit more as DH just because he's so much older. Like your main three third basemen are Rojas, Manuel Rivera, and Evan Longoria, but you're going to put Longoria the least amount at third base just because he's so old, even though defensively he's as good as any of them. Because he's so old, you're going to have you want to put the less wear and tear on his body. So you're not going to put him at third base as much. He's mostly going to play a lot more DH for you when there's a lefty on the mound. So when you do want a righty DH at third base, and the D-backs have been riding with Emmanuel Rivera right now, you could put Perdomo there as a switch hitter at third base and put Nick Ahmed at shortstop, but still leads to all the same problems because Perdomo has 5 home runs. Nick Ahmed, he has 2 home runs. Josh Rojas doesn't even have one. Emmanuel Rivera only has one. So basically, your whole third base power department is carried by Evan Longoria, who's really more of a DH than a third baseman at this point of his career. So the D-backs need to figure out how to get a little bit more power from their corner infield because, of course, Christian Walker can hit a ton of bombs, but the left side of your infield, really, though, maybe the question should be just entirely for the left side of your infield because you're just getting no power from that left side. And I feel like you need at least one more versatile guy that could do a bunch for you offensively on both sides. Not both sides, but at both shortstop and third base. If you could get a guy like another Josh Rojas, Perdomo type who has a little bit more power, I think that would be really helpful for this D-backs team. Like someone like Thairo Estrada, he could probably play a little third base. He could play a little shortstop, and he's someone that has 9 home runs in 70 games right now, has been on like a little power surge this season with 18 stolen bases. Just like someone like that. I'm not saying you have to go out and acquire him, but someone that has like near double-digit home runs, maybe does have double-digit home runs at this point of the season, that could play third base and shortstop. I think that would be the perfect kind of move for the D-backs. I don't think it has to be an elite-level player, but a Ben Zobrist type that's good. Someone like Martin Prado, someone like that, a left side guy on the infield that could provide some pop, veteran leadership, and doesn't have to play every day, but would be a nice platoon guy when there's a lefty on the mound to go with Evan Longoria and create some power righty and have some power righty guys. He could also be a lefty, which would be interesting because I wouldn't mind another lefty power guy. And maybe that's how you platoon him with Evan Longoria. Evan Longoria against lefties as your power righty, and then you put this new guy in against righties as your power lefty. But either way, I think the D-backs need another power hitter for the left side of their infield because they just do not have enough of those right now. I think next up, this kind of plays into the last one, but just how much do you really trust your shortstop right now? I know Perdomo is an all-star, but he's been kind of slow, not slumping, maybe slumping. He's been slowing down a little bit. You look at his last 28 days, which is 24 games. He's only batting 235 with a 643 OPS. The month of May was not pretty for Perdomo. In 21 games in May, he batted 191. He did bat 286 in the month of June, but in 6 games in July, he's back down to 111. So he's been a little bit hit or miss. Every other month, he's performed well from a batting average standpoint. And of course, Nick Ahmed is not going to give you much offensively. With Josh Rojas trying to rediscover his swing, I don't know how much I want to trust putting all my eggs in the Perdomo basket at shortstop. I'm very grateful. I'm very excited to watch him in the All-Star game, but I think the D-backs, this kind of goes along with the last point, just maybe needs to add one more bat to the left side of the infield just for prosperity's sake, because I do like this D-backs team, but I think that left side has a little bit more to be desired. And maybe this option can come in internally from Blaze Alexander, a Buddy Kennedy. Maybe there is someone in the minors that could come up and get hot for a couple of weeks and carry this D-backs team from the left side, potentially. But I think one more guy on the left side of the infield, third base and a shortstop would be nice. A guy that could play both, I think, is the preferable option. I don't think the D-backs need both a shortstop and third baseman. One guy that could cover both positions would make me happy. Then the last thing that I want to talk about, the last improvement, it's just D-backs need to be a little bit better at runners in scoring position. They haven't been bad this year because, of course, the D-backs have They like lead the NL run scoring percentage, extra base taken percentage. Like all the numbers say the D-backs are great at creating runs and bringing those runs home. But they do it through a lot of chaos and speed. The D-backs haven't been elite at bringing runners home when those have been runners in scoring position. Like one of the big knocks he's talked about with Christian Walker, right? He likes to hit a lot of solo home runs. This D-backs team on the year is pretty much league average when you look at their numbers where runners in scoring position. So just getting slightly better than that would make me happy, because a team like the Cincinnati Reds, their offense is getting better. A team like the Marlins, their offense is getting better. The D-backs offense slowed down just a little bit the last couple of weeks. We did see them get their first get shut out for the first time this season as well. But overall, very impressed with this D-backs team from the first half of the season. I laid out my expectations. I laid out my improvements. I'm super excited for what's in store for the rest of the D-backs this year. And I'm super excited to watch the D-backs 4 All-Stars in the All-Star game in Seattle on Tuesday. The arrow is pointing up for D-backs Nation right now. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage insight. Shout out to everyone who tuned into today's podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. If you do listen every day, put the hashtag everyday in the comment section on YouTube. Don't forget to catch every D-backs pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app and search up Diamondbacks. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.